Are you ready?
Let's get ready to rumble! Can't wait!
This is Moffett on the mic on the A1 Sports Network.
Bow to the masters. Break it down!
How you doing, everybody, and welcome to the Moffett on the Mic radio show, courtesy of the A1 Sports Network. I am Craig Moffett, and of course, this show would not be complete without the production stylings of the people's producer, the head honcho, the big cheese, chief cook and bottle washer of the A1 Sports Radio Network. I am talking about the founder, Chris Clip.
What's up, Craig? So excited for today's show. So excited, man.
I'm pretty fired up, too. As you know, we have Creator Pro champion, indie wrestling star VSK joining us in a few minutes. We're going to talk a lot about the world of wrestling, especially on the indie circuit, so we're pretty psyched to have him on. It was actually pretty cool because when I put it out there and you put it out there, we got some likes from indie wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually very cool.
Yeah.
So we're pretty psyched to have him on, and we're looking forward to it. And yeah, so pretty much there's that. And Clem, how was your day today, man? All right?
Good, man. It's just been very, very good so far. And like I said, this is the only thing I was thinking about today. Like just doing this interview because, this isn't as much as I love doing the shows with Christine, Jake, Ike, and everyone else we've done a show with. This is our first athlete that we've had on the show. So it's like it's a little I'm a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little nervous heading into this one.
And the thing is, he's a well-recognized wrestler. He's all over the indie circuit. It's not just Cap. He does stuff. He's in a faction with Smart Mark Sterling and Alex Reynolds, I think they're like a little kind of like a triple threat type in another federation. I mean, and his matches are awesome. Like I think his matches are great. Like the last time I saw him, he wrestled Ethan Page in Limbrook, and his match kicked ass.
Yeah, I watched his match against MJF, and it was a great match. It was a really incredible match.
And the thing is, I think he's a big Islander guy because he's got the old Islander lettering on his gear.
Yeah, so, I saw his on Pro Wrestling Tees. He has a couple of shirts on there. Look, if I knew I wish I found out sooner that he had shirts on Pro Wrestling Tees because I would have bought one. I would have bought one of them. He's here, by the way. He's ready.
All right, put him through, man. Let's get him through right now. Joining us right now on the Moffett on the Mic show, he is the Creator Pro champion. He is an indie wrestling star, and according to his Twitter profile, he is an a-hole with a smile. We are talking about the one and only VSK. Champ, are you there? Champ, what's going on, man?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for taking the time to come on the show and hang out with us and talk some wrestling, all right?
Oh, of course.
And by the way, that wall behind you looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's where I like to set up all my interviews that I don't do because I figure I have it. I might as well show it off, right?
So we get to be one of the few that get to appreciate the old WWF magazines behind. I love it. I think it's great.
So is there a video component to this? I was only listening to the audio ones. I didn't know if I was going to get to show it off or not.
I'll put it on YouTube.
So
I'll put it on YouTube.
Perfect. All right. So what this is behind me is every Shawn Michaels WWF magazine cover in chronological order.
Oh, that's sick.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I have an issue.
We would have just said he's your idol, but
Well, both are true.
So obviously with the pandemic, of course, Cap really hasn't done a show since March, and the last show you did was with no fans because that was pretty much when the pandemic really started to kind of hit everywhere pretty much. Can you describe the mood of, maybe the roster, just the other wrestlers that night, and how was it wrestling without fans in the room for a show that really was supposed to be kind of a big, one of your monthly Cap shows?
Yeah, when the wrestlers found out that we weren't going to get to have fans, obviously it's very upsetting. But Cap does those kind of tapings all the time where we'll have things for Cap TV or, whatever, just matches to throw up on YouTube. So it wasn't that unusual to have no fans, but the fact that it was supposed to be one of our bigger shows that completely just got canceled, it's always nice wrestling at that Cap building because that's our home. So those are always fun shows. And literally I think the show was the 15th, and like I had gone out to dinner on the 14th. I had the show on the 15th, and then I think Monday they like shut down New York. So like it all happened so fast. So all of us at the show, like we weren't sure if we should be shaking hands or like what to do.
Yeah.
And I work at a hospital outside of being VSK, so I'm like, I don't know if you guys should even be around me. So it was a very like confusing and scary time. But you know, now that things are starting slowly to open back up, everyone's very excited. You know, everyone's had pretty much 3 months to recoup and try and, you know, reinvent themselves or do whatever they need to do and get ready to go.
Now, just to touch on that, has there been any discussion on when a Cap show might take place?
No, right now we're kind of just sitting tight and waiting. We had that one set up, and then we had something set up for April or May, I believe, and that one had to be canceled as well. So now, you know, it's kind of at the point where we want to have a show, but nothing's opening back up, and we can't have a show without fans because Creative Pro, you know, as great as it is and as many people come out of it, it's on a very tight budget.
Yeah.
So if we're not getting, you know, the fans at the shows, then we can't have the shows. And, you know, it's just a simple economic thing, unfortunately. So we kind of got to wait for the restrictions to be lightened a little bit.
Now, speaking of, you know, the no fans at the Cap shows, you're obviously a big WWE fan and probably an AEW fan as well. What's it like from your perspective, like with like wrestling without fans? Like, don't like the wrestlers kind of like need the fans to be there in some sort of a way, or like?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Because you know, you got to keep in mind everything that we're doing is to garner a reaction from the fans. So you know, when we do the Cap tapings with no fans, we still have whoever isn't wrestling is in the crowd, similar to what AEW is doing. Because you kind of need some sort of atmosphere and some sort of noise to be happening. So there's some feedback to what you're doing. Otherwise, it kind of just feels like you're doing it in a vacuum.
Right.
And then it's like, why am I even doing this? But, you know, obviously the first couple weeks or the first month of WWE was a little rough when they're just shooting empty seats.
Yeah.
It kind of like took me anyway out of, you know, watching the product. I have not missed a Raw for however many years it's on, 27 years. And then I saw this no crowd Raw and I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I actually took a couple of weeks off of Raw. And then, you know, if I didn't have so many friends in AEW, I don't know if I would have done the same thing there, but I've watched every AEW, but they're also doing, you know, they have a little bit of noise and they have people watching to create some excitement because you need that excitement.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the promos come off a bit flat when there's no fans because obviously you need that fan reaction and stuff.
Yeah.
When you hear a guy like Drew McIntyre try to say his piece in his rough Irish voice, and then you're just like, it's crickets. It does come off very awkward. I know they're trying to do it now, having the NXT wrestlers serve as the fans and all that stuff. But at the last show, I go to the shows in Limbrook all the time because they're great. And I mean, you guys really put your blood, sweat, and tears into those shows, and it's just they're awesome. And you know, and every time they come to Limbrook, it's like I'll be the first one buying a ringside ticket. I can't, like, I love
that's awesome.
Your last two, at least the last two I saw at Limbrook, you actually had some pretty big matches against some pretty strong competition. One was obviously Shawn Spears back in May, and the other one recently in February against Ethan Page. You know, with Shawn Spears, with his resume, of course, being Ty Dillinger in WWE and now in AEW, and with Ethan Page in Impact Wrestling, since you're one of the big fish pretty much at Cap, being the Cap champion, my question is, did you go into either of those matches maybe with a little bit of maybe nervousness or anxiousness? And do you get a little starstruck when you find out you're going to be wrestling like bigger, like talent like Spears and talent like Page?
Of course, to everything that you just asked. You know, I get nervous for every match that I have pretty much, which I think is a good thing. Like even Eric James from Creative Pro, he's one of my first friends I've ever met in professional wrestling. We've been wrestling together 13 years, and I still get nervous when I'm wrestling him. And I think we've had probably like 100 matches either against each other as partners. And it's still, you know, you still want to perform and you still want to steal the show, or at least I do. Maybe I'm just an asshole. But like for these bigger shows where I'm facing people like Spears and Ethan Page, I look at it as kind of like a proving ground for myself because, like you said, I am kind of sort of now a big fish in this promotion, and I want to show that I can bring that somewhere else and face these bigger competitors and bigger opponents, and stand toe to toe with them. Where if you saw me on TV on a Wednesday night, you wouldn't say like, "Oh, this guy looks out of place." So it's really me trying to prove a point and stand toe to toe with them, but also earn their respect, so that if down the road we see each other at a show, this person can vouch for me and say, "Oh, I know this guy. He can go." So it's definitely a proving ground type thing. There's definitely a lot of nerves because you want to deliver, but like I said, I've been doing this 13 years, so there's like the part of me that is like, okay, this is what I've been preparing for, and this is the opponents I should be facing, and then there's the other part that's like, I hope I'm not just blowing smoke up my own ass, and I hope that I can back this up.
Speaking of, getting nervous before matches and whatnot, what was it like getting dragged out of the car by Brock Lesnar?
I don't know that I've ever talked about this anywhere, so I'll tell you the whole story. It's very funny. So that was 2 or 3 months after I had my match on Raw against Viking Raiders, and in that match, they did that German suplex clothesline thing, and I landed on my shoulder and separated my collarbone. I was in a sling for weeks. I had to go to PT for 5 weeks. I was in bad shape. Got back to wrestling, and I got to go to Raw for that Brock Lesnar spot at the Coliseum or wherever it was, Barclays. And they picked me to do this, and Brock Lesnar was super nice. And, he introduced himself to me. He remembered my name. We were talking. Everything was cool. And then probably 20 minutes before the whole skit went down, he came back over to the area, and he was beet red, and he was just pacing. And it was very, very intimidating. Wow. So, I went over and I said something to him like, "Hey, we still doing what we talked about before?" And he, in the most serious fashion, said, "I don't know what we're doing once the camera starts rolling. Whatever happens, happens." So, I like to pretend, but I am only 185 pounds. I am 5'7", 5'8" in heels. So I now am scared to death of this 300-pound monster man who's going to rip me out of a car. So I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm kind of thinking okay, what's the best way to get pulled by a gorilla out of a car and not hurt yourself? And now the way I'm positioned, the way he's going to pull me, if I don't maneuver quick, I'm going to get pulled right out onto the shoulder that I just rehabbed for 2 months. So I'm trying to figure out okay, how can I tuck and roll and make this okay? When he started coming towards the door, the guy who was the limo driver said, "Hey, just so you know, when Brock grabs you, it's going to feel like nothing you've ever felt before in your life." And he was right, because Brock grabbed my ankle, and before I even knew it, I was on the ground. And I don't know the time between, I don't know where it went, but I was in the limo, and then I was on the floor. And I remember looking up and being petrified, saying, "I'm not Ray," because that is the only thing that I could think at that moment, because holy crap, that was so scary.
The funny thing about those 2 Raws, the one with the Viking Raiders and the one that you did with Lesnar, I was with my daughter both times, I've made her into a huge wrestling fan. I really want to bring her to a Cap show in the future.
Awesome.
And I was watching the part where you fly out of the car from Lesnar, and I tap my daughter on the shoulder. I go, "That's VSK, right?" And my daughter looks at me like, "Who?" And I'm just like, oh yeah, you haven't been to a Cap show yet. What am I talking about? Yeah. And then the Viking Raiders show was funny because that was the first show I took my daughter to, Monday Night Raw, because she loves Raw. And I didn't realize it, but I was sitting in the Creative Pro section.
Oh, I didn't know we had a section.
I was sitting right next to the ring announcer from Creative Pro. I forgot his name. He's a super nice guy.
Ryan Peterson.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy. And there was some of the wrestlers were behind me and everything, and they were like, "Oh, and then because as soon as you and we're with Jack Tomlinson."
Yes.
And when the 2 of you walked out, he was like, "Oh, VSK," and I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I totally forgot, because I'm just kind of fixated on the match. And then when the house lights are down and it's commercial break, and I saw the 2 of you guys walk out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he was just like, "Oh my God, he just threw Jack Tomlinson across the ring." It was actually really funny, but it was just when I saw you go out of that limo, I was like, oh my God, that's VSK. He's the champ.
It's where the Instagram and Twitter name comes from. Is that VSK? Because you never know where I'm going to pop up.
Now with the Viking Raiders, were they like really cool afterwards? I mean, because like when you got hurt, I mean, and stuff like that. Because I mean, I saw the picture of you the day after Raw when
Yes.
you were you had like a thumb up and you had your arm in a sling.
Yes. Regardless of what it looks like in that picture, that was the most painful thing that has ever happened to me in my life. So they were super cool. They came and found me in the doctor's medic room there, and we talked a little bit before I got out of there and went home. Obviously, no one's fault. They weren't trying to kill me. They just did. They're gigantic men. So, we talked a little bit afterwards, and then I want to say that was July. In September, I went down to NXT, and I saw Ivar, and we had a nice little chat. We took a picture together. Super cool guy, very apologetic again, and he was happy to see that I was using both arms again.
Now, you wrestled on, like we just mentioned, Monday Night Raw and 205 Live. So what's
Yes.
it like going from the indie scene right to the big leagues like that?
Well, like I was saying before, with the nervousness and the butterflies, this is like times 3 million, because again, it's what I have dreamed about my whole life. It's what I've been training for the whole time I've been in wrestling, is to get to WWE. That's always been the biggest game. So it's always the goal is to get here. And then when you're walking down that ramp for the first time, it's kind of like that. Can I curse?
Yeah, you can curse. Yeah, curse it up.
Holy shit, I'm here. Like, it's insane, because it doesn't make any sense that this thing that seemed like such a giant dream that could never be attained, now all of a sudden it's happening. And then so the first match I did, 205 Live, I'm standing in the ring, and I'm with Kevin Tibbs, who's a buddy of mine from Victory Pro Wrestling. We trained together, and we're both very nervous. And we were in the Dunkin' Donut Center, which is in Rhode Island, I believe. And I wrestle for Beyond in Rhode Island. And there was a group of Beyond fans there, and they started chanting VSK. And once that happened, it was like this. I could take a breath, and I could relax my shoulders for a second and be like, okay, it's not that different. There's a lot more people. I'm going to be on television, but it's really not that different. And then I was able to calm down a little bit and kind of do, what I'm supposed to do. But that initial, hey, you're going to have a match tonight, and hey, go walk down the aisle. It's like this unworldly thing that I've dreamt about, but didn't think that could happen. But now it's happening. It's insane.
We are talking to the Creative Pro champion VSK here on the Moffett on the Mic show. So I just want to get your thoughts right now, because recently there were 2 indie wrestling shows. I think one was in Iowa, and there was another one somewhere else. I can't remember off the top of my head. One was really criticized because it was in a packed room with regards to social distancing and, of course, with the pandemic. The other one was an outdoor show, and it looked like a little bit better, but you can never know these days. My question with you is, as right now as an indie wrestler, in this, where we are in the midst of this pandemic, do you feel comfortable doing shows, whether indoors or outdoors, or is it something that you just kind of, because you're just trying to get a name for yourself, of course, and just trying to book gigs, or are you just looking to kind of oversee that just for the sake of putting on a show for the fans?
Yeah, obviously it's a double-edged sword. It's a very strange time right now. Before all of this happened, I had set some goals for myself. I wanted to have 80 matches this year, which would have been the most I've ever had. 2019, I had the most I'd ever had up to that point. I wanted to try and, surpass that this year. I was well on my way. I had stuff booked from January to July, and then all of a sudden everything went away. So all of my goals and, everything I was aspiring for this year to be kind of isn't going to happen now. So that took a long time to come to terms with. But at the same time, like I said, I work at a hospital. I actually got COVID in April, and I had it for 4 weeks, where I was sitting in this basement, quarantined from my wife, away from everybody. So by no means do I want to experience that again, or be someone that could pass that on to, someone else, or see that happen. Since then, by the way, I've tested negative and I'm okay now. But it's very scary, because you don't know, if you're in these big groups, even if you're just in the locker room, you don't know who has been around who else. You don't know what they're coming from.
Yeah.
And, as much as we can do, we are doing as we're trying to like start getting training going and stuff like that. But you never know. I hung out with people on Saturday. I got a fever on Sunday and got tested positive for the virus on Monday. No one that I was around the Saturday got it. My wife never got it, but who knows, like how close I was to giving it to somebody or where I even got it from. So you want to be safe and you want to do the right thing. It's killing me not to wrestle, but at the same time, I just want this to, I want to do everything I can to make this not continue on so that we can get back to wrestling.
Well, listen, man, it's great to hear that you're better and you're recovered and that your family's safe and healthy as well, man. Like,
yeah, thank you.
So.
Now, I think I'm going to answer my own question here by your wall of Shawn Michaels magazines behind you. But was he the wrestler that was like, you know what, I want to go into wrestling because of him, or was it someone else?
So it's like a expansion of each person growing into making me want to do this even more.
Mm-hmm.
I got into wrestling because of Hulk Hogan, like everybody did my age.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw Macho Man, and Macho Man like made me fall in love with wrestling to like a whole new degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then in like 91, 92, or definitely 92, when Shawn left the Rockers and started doing his own thing, I remember like as whatever age I was, like 5, I remember being like, this guy's cool. And then I was like, I want to be this guy. And then it was like, I want to be a wrestler like this guy. So like as much as I got into it super young, when I saw Shawn Michaels, I was like, this is it. I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And I'm going to be Shawn Michaels. I'm not Shawn Michaels, but I'm trying my best.
It's kind of funny, like back in the day when he threw Jannetty through the plate glass window of the barbershop, that never happened, I don't think, in any wrestling or like any type of. Now it's like business as usual in some federations. I mean, like I've seen matches where people are breaking glass and light tubes all over each other. It's just like a normal Saturday. So, but back then when he threw Jannetty through that window and he started bleeding and stuff, that was something you never saw, like ever on like professional wrestling back then, like late 80s, early 90s type stuff.
It was such a shocking thing that it made an impact with a lot of people, and obviously it made Shawn Michaels stand out to a lot of people, because I think my generation of wrestlers, and like a little before and a little after, we all, or most people, will say like Shawn Michaels was a huge influence on them. And you can see by a lot of people's ring work, not just like throwing 1,000 super kicks, but just how people wrestle nowadays. A lot of that comes from Shawn Michaels.
Yeah. Question just about actually just really being an indie wrestler. What is really the toughest part about it? I mean, I know you said you wrestle for multiple federations, like different organizations, and I think they only really do like monthly shows, like if I'm like those type, like the small time.
Yeah, most places will do one show a month. There's a couple shows, a couple companies I wrestle for that'll maybe do 2.
Now, are they basically reaching out to you a lot of times to come to the show, or do you try to reach out to other federations to try to get more matches? Or?
It's both. Obviously you want to get yourself out there as much as you can to build your brand and make yourself have a little more of a value. And then at the same time, when you get to a certain point and have more value, more places will reach out to you. And then also I'm lucky enough to have a lot of friends in professional wrestling. So it's networking, it's you reaching out, and then, so it is performance-based as much as it isn't, it is. My win-loss record has never gotten me a show, but performing well has.
Because like the last Cap show that I went to, I had never heard of a few of the guys that were booked in matches. I mean, Ethan Page I definitely heard of, but there were 2 others, Kobe Durst and Space Monkey.
Yes.
And I'd never really heard of them, and I guess they were big on the Canadian circuit. And I remember Space Monkey clear as day because he was in a match and he went to do a move off the top rope, and if the wrestlers had missed, he would have literally landed right on me.
Okay.
Like I was literally like I mean, and it was just, and it was one of those like you try to move out of the way, but you're going to get hit regardless, so you might as well just kind of take it. But then like watching, when I saw the updates on the matches for the card, and it kind of piqued my interest to watch their YouTube stuff, and for both wrestlers. So I was always curious how Hawkins, Brian Myers, has booked, how he finds these guys, or just like locates talent, to come do these shows. Cause it's really just it's always been really interesting to me because there's so many guys on the indie circuit and they go out there and they put on great matches.
Well, I know for Creative Pro, not to cut you off,
Yeah, it's okay.
people I think forget that Brian was actually on the indies for that 2 years.
Mhm.
So he hustled like nobody else, because that's when I joined Creative Pro, he got fired, just a few months later. And
Right.
I watched him hustle and get on every show that he could, every weekend, every state, anywhere that he could. He would just get in the car with people and go drive to shows. So he met a lot of these guys doing that. I know him and Ethan Page are very good friends. That's how, that happened.
That's
Just
great.
from him being able to go and do these shows, which then again helps us because now Brian's friends with Ethan Page. Ethan Page comes to Creative Pro. Now Ethan Page and I have become very friendly. And the same thing with all these people. That's how I'm going to call them Beaver Boys, but Dark Order, Johnny Silver and Alex Reynolds, Chris Statlander, MJF, Max Caster tonight. These guys we all travel together. We all do different shows together. And just through these things, meeting new people and getting our names out there that way with, hey, this person, this person's a good wrestler and this person's a person, a lot of the people that I talk to in wrestling are people that I'm actually friends with in real life. And it's a big deal to be a good person.
Mhm.
And that goes a long way for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, speaking of being a good person, one of my favorite heels in the wrestling business is MJF. I think he's great. He's fantastic. But, you mentioned good person. Is he as much of a dick in real life as he is on TV?
Yes. So there's no need to pause even with that question. Of course he is. But I've known Max for pretty much his entire wrestling career. So he and I have a very different relationship than most people. However, is he a dick? 1,000%. It's not really a character or a gimmick. He is himself.
The first cap show I went to was when you wrestled Shawn Spears back last May, and the main event was MJF, Pat Buck, and Bear Bronson in a triple threat. And I was sitting next to MJF's parents, or I think his dad. And Pat Buck looked at MJF's dad straight in the face and just said, "This is your fault," before he I couldn't stop laughing.
It's very true. I don't know if you saw on MJF's Instagram or Twitter, whatever it was on, he got his dad for Father's Day a mug that said, "Thank God you didn't pull out and created the greatest person ever," or something like that.
Oh, he's great. I love it. He's
a great villain, but we always definitely were curious if he's really like that, because there's even been some stories online where somebody caught him on video giving the finger to a kid, like a 7 or 8 year old kid.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I saw that video. I'm surprised that there's only one video of that, honestly.
Well, I mean, I only found one. There could be
okay, yeah.
We don't know, but I mean, it's just But that day, when I that was and just watching that, and he looked MJF's dad straight stone face and just basically said, "This is your fault," and just hits him with a chop across the chest. I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was absolutely hysterical.
His dad's a character.
So at Creative Pro, I guess being a pro wrestler, I've always been curious because, there are guys who can lift 500 pounds like it's nothing, and then there are guys who can put on 60-minute Ironman matches like it's nothing. So as an indie wrestler or just a wrestler in general, do you think that strength or conditioning is more important? And then just to kind of add on that too, at Creative Pro during your classes, what was the toughest drill you had to do?
Oh boy. All right. So I'm going to answer backwards. I actually didn't train at Creative Pro.
Oh, okay.
I started training with Ricky Reyes, who is Cortez Castro on Lucha Underground. You see how much I watched it. Sorry, Ricky. But he used to have pretty intense practices because at Victory Pro Wrestling, where I originally trained, we would be there for 8 hours. We would put up the ring for an hour, train for 6, and then take down the ring for an hour. So those were brutal days of just doing everything under the sun. But when I came over to Creative Pro, I actually, for a little while, and I guess kind of sort of now as well, have been an assistant trainer or a senior person, so that when Brian or Pat isn't around, I can help out and jump in there and show, people some things. So as for the hardest training, Brian likes to do these drills called Dr. Tom drills, which are like basically you're doing a whole match. There's one person in the middle, and you go to one corner and you do a sequence in a match. You go to the next corner, you do a sequence in a match, and you go through all four corners doing 4 different sequences, and you do that 4 times.
Mhm.
And then when you're done with that, you do like basically this blow up drill where you're taking like 10 to 15 to 20 bumps after you've just done all of that. And I remember the last time we did it before all of this quarantine happened, I kept jumping in and just going really fast with people to try and try and get them tired or try and make them mess up, just to be a dick. And then when it was my turn to be in the middle and do the 16 rounds,
Mhm.
everybody went out of their way to go as fast as possible with me to try and mess me up. And that sucked a lot. So definitely that has been the hardest thing that I've felt training wise in a long time. And then Brian used to always do competitions. He would get like a bag of t-shirts, just a bag of wrestling shirts, and throw it in the ring and be like, all right, whoever can do the most tackle drop downs gets to pick the first t-shirt. And I've seen people do more tackle drop downs in that drill than I've done in my 13 years of wrestling. So people just really want these t-shirts. And then going back to the original question, both are so important. Conditioning is obviously important, but I'm saying to you that as a person who doesn't do any conditioning outside of wrestling.
Right.
So all of my training is strength training, and I want to look like I'm a wrestler training, where all of my in-ring training is trying to blow myself up and have the endurance to have a wrestling match. Because I feel like this is so cliche to say, but like running on the treadmill or doing like wind sprints is so different than being in a wrestling ring. So no matter how much you train, like to have your cardiovascular endurance up, when you get in the ring, it's a completely different thing.
Right.
So my background before I got into wrestling was I started training with powerlifters. So I have a like fake powerlifting background. I've done a powerlifting meet. I've always tried to be strong. Does it carry over to the ring? I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Maybe I could pick someone up more than the next person. But it's also important to be strong so that you can, control your body and control your opponent's body and keep everybody safe in the process. But unless you're in the ring doing what you need to do in the ring, you're not ever going to be cardiovascularly where you need to be. And when, I like to have these long 15, 20, 25, 30-minute matches. And it doesn't matter how strong I am by the 20th minute because I am trying to just breathe.
You're just exhausted. Because like a
Yeah.
5-minute match, like we're like, oh, it's just 5 minutes. But people like me who are terribly out of shape are probably like, we probably die within the first 30 seconds.
Well, the thing you don't even think about in a 5-minute match is you're nervous.
Yeah.
You're getting hit by somebody. You're getting moved around and thrown around by somebody. You have to move somebody around and throw them around. And it's not just like 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes of intense, like, and once you're tensed up and having to like do all this stuff, that 5 minutes can feel like 20 very quickly.
Now, I got kind of a two-part question here. One is, there are two very, famous. We already talked about MJF. The other person in AEW is Chris Statlander. She recently tore ACL, I think, right?
Yes.
There it is. There it is. She's great. I love the gimmick. It's so cool. But
You remember you asked me about MJF before?
yeah.
Kristen, it's also not a gimmick. She's actually an alien. I met her the day that she landed.
Did she do like the boop? Like to
Yeah. The boop is a new thing. I don't know where that came from.
No, I was gonna ask, have you talked to her since the injury? And because I had to do some research, so I had to stalk your Instagram and whatnot, like a weirdo. But like, what's your friendship like with her? Because I saw in some post you said you were her dad and she called you dad. So I gotta ask what that was about.
So I believe Kristen's second ever day at Creative Pro, I was coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the drills that we did, she ended up hitting her head on the post
Mhm.
and split her head open. It was bleeding all over, like just bleeding down her face. This is like an hour into a 3-hour practice. And I was like, holy shit, I'm going to be fired. This girl's never going to come back. Like, what the fuck? So just like, I was like, okay, can't do that anymore. But she was the toughest girl ever, and literally took a paper towel and then got back in the ring. And I was like, okay, cool. And then ever since that day, she and I have just become very close, where I have tried to give her every tool that I have to be successful in professional wrestling, because she's someone that she wants to be a good wrestler as much as anybody else that I've ever met. She is so dedicated. She's so committed. She's so hard on herself, and she broke her ankle or foot. She broke her foot only a few months into practice. She didn't miss a day. She came down every day with a boot on and crutches and just watched. She wants to learn. She wants to get better every single day, and she wants to help other people learn and get better. So, if you have that attitude, I have all the time in the world for you. I will tell you everything I know and tell you everything I don't know and hope that it's right. So the whole dad thing came up because I'm super protective of her, and she does crazy, stupid shit in her matches sometimes where I think that she's going to die, to the point where like I'm looking away and I can't even watch some of her matches. But before every match, I tell her to please be safe, and then every match after, even now in AEW, I'll text her and make sure that she's okay, because I know that she does a lot of stupid shit, and I don't want her to get hurt.
So of course, we're gonna switch from wrestling to hockey.
Sure.
You, I know, are a big Islander guy. There we go. And thank you for representing the Gordon's Fisherman logo, because I don't know, I don't hate that logo the way Islander fans do. I guess that's just me. So, obviously from your gear, I know you have the old lettering from the jersey and stuff.
Yes.
And I've seen you in some pictures with some Islander. Give me your thoughts on what you think of the Islanders for the playoffs against Florida, or the fact that no games are going to be at the Coliseum for this year and maybe ever again.
Let's start there. I'm really upset about that. When I saw the Coliseum might be closed next year,
it's very depressing.
For the last, I want to say 8 seasons, my dad has had season tickets from my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to pretty much every game this past season. And then, however many years I've been going to as many games as I can around my wrestling schedule.
Right.
And when they left the Coliseum and went to the Barclays, what a devastating move, because I get that the Barclays is a newer, nicer arena, but it's not for hockey. And it's just not the same atmosphere there. So when they came home and then they announced they were going to do all the games at the Coliseum next year, I was so excited. To read now that the Coliseum might not even be opening back up, it's devastating. And not just for hockey, that's where I saw my first wrestling show. That's where I had my match on Monday Night Raw. It's all of these things. So that building means a lot to me. And it just to know that it might not open back up is really, really upsetting.
I mean, they condensed it. They made it smaller, which actually made it a lot better, because I've seen a few concerts there. I've seen Raw there, and I haven't been able to get to an Islander game there. But the place was great. I mean, just from sound quality, just from whatever, and when you look at where you're sitting, you don't realize how close you are to whether it's the stage or whether it's the ring or something like that for wrestling. I thought it was great. It was just, they didn't really do anything to expand the concourses. So you got that old school feel of whether the t-shirt line bleeds into the bathroom line kind of thing. So people really confused and
they put I know they sunk a lot of money into it. I don't know if anything went into anything more than that disgusting outside spaceship look that it has now. Maybe that's where Kristen came from. But the first time I went back, obviously I'm biased because it is the Coliseum and it's, like I said, it's my home arena. And the fact that they were able to do the upgrades and make it feel a little bit better inside was great. Yeah. I've sat against the glass at hockey games. I've also literally sat against the wall all the way up in the nosebleeds. There's not a bad There's not a bad seat in the arena.
No,
so no matter what, you're in a good place there.
And that place is definitely an advantage. I think, the crowd, the advantage is It is so loud
Absolutely.
in that arena for hockey games. Even when it was
And,
Nick Barn, it was deafening. The sound when they used to score a goal in the playoffs, you thought the place was going to fall apart. Just
and you could feel that difference when you go to the Barclays games, because the 5-year span there, I would go to the Barclays. The people weren't into it as much. It's not the same feel. It's like a different crowd almost. And as exciting as it is, it's not the same.
Yeah.
And I think that translates to the ice, how they're playing.
So how do you feel about the Islanders' chances, with the playoffs and stuff, now that hockey's coming back? And
Yes, I'm sorry. I forgot that was your original question.
All right. We've been doing a lot of two-part questions, and we apologize for that.
No, it's fine.
So it's okay.
At the beginning of the season, they looked awesome, and I was really excited. And then everybody started getting injured, and then they looked less awesome. I'm hoping that everybody is able to get back on the ice now that was missing that, middle half of the season, or like not middle half, whatever. But when everyone started falling off and getting injured, we started falling apart.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the whole team can be back and together. But it's a long time to not play hockey, to just suddenly get thrown in it.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like right now anything can happen and anybody has a shot. I feel like it's going to be a very crazy ride to the cup, because just kind of everyone's at a level playing field again, because everybody just came off this break. Everyone's just getting back together, and now all of a sudden it's the playoffs. Like, you think about like the first 30 games of the season, not a lot of teams are the same the first 30 games and the last 30 games. And now this is the first 30 games, and then you win a Stanley Cup.
But they were kind of like free falling right before hockey shut down. So do you think it was like, because I brought this up, we had an Islanders guy on our show about a few weeks ago, and I kind of just asked him point blank, was the pandemic a blessing in disguise for the Islanders? Because after they lost that game in Ottawa, even I was like, I don't know if they're going to make it, because it was a brutal loss to the Senators.
I kept saying that, actually, the same thing. This might be the best thing to happen to their season. Obviously when we didn't know if hockey was going to come back, they were still like teetering on the wild card. And it's like, all right, if we ended today, we would have made the playoffs. Fine. That's fine. That's all we need. But, obviously it's a tall task, because they're one of the teams that are going to have to play more games than anybody else if they advance. Right. And the last few seasons we've seen the playoffs can be difficult for them. We saw last year they crushed in the first round and then
swept in the second round.
Yeah.
And that was unexpected too, because I really thought they were going to take care of Carolina quickly.
Yeah.
That's how good they were. The way they played against the Penguins, I was shocked that they got swept by the Carolina Hurricanes.
It was amazing, in a bad way. But I think that having this time off to rest is probably going to help them, since they were kind of losing focus while losing players. Yeah. Hopefully this has been enough time to kind of get back on the game plan. Like, Barry Trotz has been doing a great job.
He's been fantastic. Yeah.
So if he can, wrangle everybody back and get them back in line, they all should be healthy. They just had 3 months off. Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful that, at least I want to get past Florida, obviously, and then we'll reassess there.
Who's your favorite Islander?
I'm a Boychuk fan. Cizikas is great. I have a Tavares jersey that I can't wear anymore. But guys like Barzell, Clutterbuck, Martin, I feel like we don't have a star. Obviously, Barzell is, head and shoulders above in skill, but there's so many guys who bring so many things to the table that we're an ensemble cast. Mm-hmm. So you saw it when people started getting injured. Cizikas gets injured, that whole fourth line doesn't play as well anymore. So you need everybody there. It's a cop-out answer.
The one thing I didn't like what the Islanders did last offseason was they kind of brought the same team back, meaning they brought Eberle back. And I liked Jordan Eberle. I thought he was a good player. Same thing with Brock Nelson, who I've always thought was more of a first half player, not a second half. I was he tends to disappear in the second half. And I guess that was I don't think it was their undoing yet, because we don't know how they're going to be in the playoffs. But I hated the idea of them bringing back almost the same team.
I agree. Every season you wait to see what's going to happen, what draft picks, what trades are going to be made. And then each year it feels like the Islanders, you're just sitting there waiting. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, and all right.
I'm curious about the development in Bridgeport too, because I always feel like those guys, when they come up, they're not as good as when they were first drafted. And I guess
Well,
guys like Dal Cole and Ho Sang, like for example.
I was just gonna say, I love seeing everybody in the Hosang jerseys, thinking that he was the second coming and he was gonna save the team, and he made it like 5 games.
Yeah, and I mean Dal Cole was more of like a third line winger, or like a fourth line guy, and like he's not what we were hoping, I guess. And then when you see other guys like, guys were brought up this year like Oliver Wahlstrom, Kiefer Bellows, they were great in Bridgeport, and then when they come up to the big team, they're, they don't play as much, obviously, of course, but it just, you start to get a little nervous that they're not going to pan out the way you really want them to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing with wrestling. Like I was saying before, you want it to be that if I'm to step in an AEW ring or a WWE ring, that I'm not going to look out of place.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of this has to trickle down. Whatever Trotz is doing to make the Islanders look so great has to fall into Bridgeport's lap to say, hey, we got to do this system as well so that when they get there, they're ready for it.
Now I'll bring it back to wrestling. If you could have a dream match against anyone in WWE, AEW, New Japan, whoever it would be, who would it be against?
Like a current wrestler?
Current wrestler.
Or
current. You can give me current and all time.
Well, all time is obviously Shawn Michaels. That's why that's an easy one. I didn't have to think about that.
You have no problem getting sweet chin music, right? Is that
no. I'll take as many as you need, or I'll flinch from the thought of one and just lose to that. It's fine.
Would you reenact the barbershop? The barbershop scene again with Shawn Michaels if you needed a.
I'll go even further than Jannetty threw it, just to make him look even stronger. Current day, you know what? AJ Styles is. I think he is the A1 underneath Shawn Michaels of overall performers. I would love to have a match with him. I actually tagged with him about 5 years ago in a company, and that was an incredible experience. If not AJ, then Finn Balor. I think both of those guys are another level, and they can do literally anything. And I think we have similar enough styles that we can have a pretty incredible match.
I could definitely picture you in a Finn Balor or VSK. I could definitely see a Finn Balor VSK match. I totally think that'd be sick. I don't know why. But just from between Finn Balor, Shawn Michaels, like that, I guess weight class, so to speak, I think that would be just kick-ass matches all the way. How is a guy like AJ Styles? Like you said, you tagged with him. Is he, he
was the coolest guy ever. I got in the locker room and he was there a little bit before me. And he was on the ping pong table, and he was accepting all challengers at ping pong and then sending everyone off the table because he was just killing everyone.
And nobody was letting him win, right? Just to be.
Oh, no. I know I wasn't. I know I was trying very hard, and it was not even close.
So, the Knights of Columbus where you do the shows is literally 5 minutes from my house.
Okay.
So I've been to 3 shows. And for the life of me, I do not understand how you guys can fit in that little back room selling merch. It's the tightest space ever? Because I literally thought the last time I went there, I thought I was going to die because it was so tight, with people flooding in and out.
Honestly, that's what a lot of indie wrestling is. It's making the best of the tiny space that you have. I've been to shows where there isn't even a spot to sell shirts, and you set them up on the ring and just hope that people walk by. It's not the biggest space, but there is a space, so you can't complain too much. But there are definitely times where, if I'm on the second half of the show and I'm trying to sell stuff during intermission, and then I have to get back out to go and do the final whatever stuff for my match, I can't get out, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I figure you guys are gonna be trapped there because if they're okay, everybody go back to your seats, and literally nobody moves.
Usually people are respectful if you're not wearing a shirt and holding a title belt, but it is difficult.
That's Limerick for you in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Wait, one other thing. So, and I have to ask because the day you fought Spears, I remember clear as day, your boot hit the ceiling tile, I think, and it almost knocked it loose.
I feel like that was Smart Mark who did that.
Maybe it was. I don't remember, but I can't remember. Somebody's tagline was, the man whose boot almost knocked out the ceiling of the Knights of Columbus. I couldn't tell if it was Smart. It was Smart Mark, but
I think it was Smart Mark and Colt Cabana who were having a match, and Smart Mark went to jump off the top, and put his head through the ceiling. But I did call myself recently the survivor of the Viking experience and the master of the low ceiling venues, because it seems like lately every show that I do, I can go like this and touch the ceiling, which is like a whole different skill set of how to wrestle in those buildings.
You guys go to the top rope, and I'm like, man, they might knock out the chandelier. I was like, the chandelier.
The match I wrestled Ethan Page, he gave me a body slam off the top rope and a superplex, and somehow we didn't go through the ceiling.
Well, that match killed me because that was when Ethan Page was like talking to that little girl, like three rows, and that just killed me. Clem, I don't know if you remember. I don't know, because I might have told you the story, but during that match, this little girl was just giving Ethan Page the business. And Ethan Page he was so perfect in character. Like, he just stayed perfect in character. And at one point, he just yells out, "Shut up, little girl." And oh my, the fans almost went like crazy, like booing him like left and right. And at the end of the match, you let the girl come in and pin him.
Yeah.
I was like, that was crazy in the place. Like, that
was such a cool little moment. Like, I'm very proud of that match. I thought that match was a great match. And then to get to have like that moment on top of the match that just like takes it to a whole different level. Like, we have the great wrestling match, and then here's the cool fucking entertainment, send everybody home happy thing. It was like the perfect recipe.
And then even after that, Ethan Page was still kind of like in character, and he was just like, if you want to hear from me, you have to pay $20 like everyone else. Like, it was awesome. Like, it was such a great ending to the show.
Again, like I mentioned earlier, I stalked your Instagram like a weirdo to get some information.
He got it the first time.
Oh,
we keep reminding him because
now
he's to come back on the show.
Are you a toy collector like Matt and Brian are?
Yeah, I mean, I know this is audio and it won't mean anything for the people listening, but I'm gonna flip my camera just so you can see.
Oh wow!
My setup here. So I've always been a toy collector from a kid, and then actually let me just check I'm gonna disrupt this interview for a second because I just want to check my battery life because I think I'm very close to being dead. Okay, I'm at 14%, so we have a few more moments.
All right.
Okay. I got into wrestling figure collecting as a kid. Like, I remember in the summer going to my grandparents' house and my mom like basically carrying like a Rubbermaid trunk of wrestling figures up the stairs every day to and from my grandma's house. It's just like that was always the way that I expressed my love for wrestling by like playing with the figures. When I bought my house, I kind of was like, okay, I'm a 24-year-old man. I need to stop with the wrestling figures. But then like I would see like, that's a really cool Shawn Michaels. So that's a really cool Macho Man. Let me just buy it and I'll put it aside in case I ever like do anything with my wrestling figures. And then like 2 years ago, I redid my basement and I just made it a wrestling figure shrine. What I just showed you is only one part of it. There's more figures over here. And then I have more figures that I don't have on display because I ran out of room.
And the HBK shrine right behind you.
Yeah, well, this is the magazine shrine. And then to my right is a whole shrine of all of his figures. Like every one that I have, it's a lot of money that I feel silly having spent on wrestling figures, but also it looks really cool and it makes me happy. So, hey.
So with not just Cap, but other wrestling schools, one thing I noticed at the last shows that I went to is not only do you guys wrestle, but you also do the broadcasting, the play-by-play, at least, from what I saw, because when I turned around, I think during one of the matches, I think it was like Max Caster and Chris Statlander were doing it. Is that something they teach you guys besides the in-ring work, of course? I mean, because, just kind of the behind-the-scenes stuff that goes into a show? Or is it just mostly focusing on the in-ring work and they just want to use you guys to just call the matches just to call the matches?
Creative Pro is really cool because it's a family and everybody is doing everything that they can to help each other. It's basically like a mini NXT. Right. You have Brian and Pat who do like promo classes and stuff like that. And then people are responsible for, putting up the ring, taking down the ring. And then like everybody who has any kind of background in editing or graphic designs, they get asked to help out so that, it just makes the overall product better. And Creative Pro is awesome because everybody has stepped up and gone the extra mile to give a little more. So, at no point was anyone ever like, oh, hey, if you're on this show, you might have to be a referee or you might have to be a commentator. but nobody knows the storylines of Creative Pro better than the people in Creative Pro. Nobody knows the point that we're trying to get across more than the people that are there. And everybody, pretty much everyone from Creative Pro speaks very well and can do promos very well. So to put them behind a microphone and call some matches, everyone that I've heard has been like a pretty great fit and, enhance the match and bring something that adds to it.
Now, I got one last question. We've been talking for a while now. Who would win a wrestling match, me or Craig?
Oh, jeez. It's
Oh,
okay.
boy.
You can feed his
Just from looking
That's
at
all good.
Just from looking at us.
I was going to say Craig because if you're wearing a Zack Ryder shirt, I don't know of your skills in the ring.
Oh, my God.
He alternates the shirts for every show. Sometimes it's Zack Ryder, Gargano. Yeah, he wore Ronda Rousey one time.
Okay, like if you wore a Gargano shirt, maybe I would be like, oh, this guy's like a student of the game. Like he likes good wrestling. Maybe he has studied that. But you're wearing like a Zack Ryder shirt. I would just expect you to keep doing this until like Craig punches you in the face. And just saying, woo, woo, woo.
Clothesline him and take him out.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, knowing him, he would just set himself up for that failure. And then, he'd be too crazy trying to get the crowd into it. And then just, you got to sneak up behind. Well, thanks, VSK. That makes me, I'm 1-0 against Clem. And
I'm okay with
good.
you're looking, I'll take it. That's a huge win for me.
Oh, good,
all right,
good.
so just to since your battery's dying and we're going to close out the interview. This is a question we ask a lot to all of our guests right now during this pandemic. And of course, since you were dealing with COVID, what is VSK currently binge watching besides wrestling, of course?
Oh, man. All right, well, besides wrestling, because I went back and watched 6 months of Monday Nitro, and I was like, this is terrible. I'm not watching this ever again.
God, do you know now that every Monday they have a Mongo Monday for Steve McMichael because he was such a terrible wrestler?
No.
And my wife's cousin sends it to me every day, and I cannot stop laughing. The way he runs the ropes was just brutal. The way everything about his wrestling.
Have you seen the new Twitter? What's Mongo gonna do next or whatever?
Not yet, no.
Oh, you gotta look that up. It's like, what will Mongo do? And it's just him like struggling through every segment of a wrestling match.
The Mongo Mondays kill me because it is the worst of botch wrestling by far.
But his finisher was a tombstone, and no one has died. So I mean, I guess he was okay. I don't know. My wife and I we just watched all 8 of the Harry Potters.
Okay.
That was one of the things that we did. We started watching Community. I don't know if you're a Community fan. We actually
just had a guest on a few days ago that was just binge watching Community also and highly recommended it.
It's a really good show. We're like in the middle of the 3rd season. Our problem is sticking to something. Like we started watching Community, and then like I've just been super busy with like work and working out, and now wrestling's starting to secretly come back up a little bit again. Like I've been trying to get prepared for that. So TV watching hasn't been the biggest concern, but we're always watching The Office. The Office is never not on in my house. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is always on in my house. And what else did we do recently? That might be it. I think I've just rewatched all of the shows. I haven't started anything new.
This is why I with my wife, we don't watch shows together because she loses interest quickly. And like when we're just getting into it, she's like, oh, I don't want to watch it anymore. And
that's tough.
So I have to watch it, and I have 2 young girls, and so I have times that I have to watch stuff because once they come into the room, I'm done. Like that's it. My TV time is pretty much done. Listen, VSK, man, this was awesome, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk some wrestling with us and everything.
Yeah, man.
This was awesome.
A lot of fun.
Can't wait for Creative Pro to come back because
we'll be there first show.
Man, they really.
I've been champion for almost a year now, and I haven't had a defense since March. Like I'm starting to feel like I'm not holding up my side of the bargain.
Well, we're afraid they might pull WWE rules and strip you of the title because you have.
Oh yeah.
They don't do that for heels, but they apparently do it for faces. I guess it's only for like the good guys have to strip.
Yeah.
The title.
The belt's upstairs, and I'm not giving it back. So they're gonna have to come here and take it from me.
Yeah. You're pulling a CM Punk trying to run out with the title.
Exactly.
Well, listen, man. Good luck with everything. Looking forward to seeing you get your wrestling back on track soon. And again, man, when those cap shows come to Limbrook, You know me. I'll be definitely in the front row
We'll be
watching.
there.
I look forward to a time where we can shake each other's hands in person.
Yes.
I will come up to you and I will say, "Oh yeah, you were on my show, Moffett on the mic like 6 months ago," and you're like, "Oh yeah, how are you?" No, but all kidding aside, it's thank you so much for being on the show. We really do appreciate it. Okay.
No, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care, man, and again, stay safe. All right.
Thank you. You too.
All right, that was the Creative Pro Heavyweight Champion VSK joining us on the Moffett on the Mic show. And before we get out of here, Clem, do you have anything?
Nah, man. I mean, that was just, again, we always talk about, like, are you ready for football season when we interviewed our football guys, or ready to just baseball, hockey, all this stuff. I'm very excited. I watch wrestling every week, but like now I'm even more excited to watch wrestling. Like, and especially again, like I mentioned earlier,
You know, it's kind of funny, man. I didn't know he was on 205 because I don't really watch 205 too much. There's only so much wrestling I can watch. I mean, I try to watch when I can, but it's so difficult to keep up with everything. I finally just started watching NXT in Your House.
Oh, you just started watching that?
I'm still not done. I'm still I'm up to Ciampa versus Karrion Kross because I can only watch it at certain spots.
But see, like that, like I said when we were talking to him, I did my research. I checked out his Instagram. That's the only reason because I don't like 205 Live at all. I saw he was on 205 Live. I think he wrestled It was Jack Gallagher and Brian Kendrick in a tag match, and I'm like, man, our guy VSK is getting around, and I'm looking. I can't wait for the next Creative Pro show, whenever it is. Because like I said, like you said, I'll be there. I'll be there right with you. I'll be there front row, repping the VSK shirts. I'm ready. I'm all in.
Dude, it's a great time. It's a great night out. They have a lot of great matches, and you really see the work they put in, and that's the type of stuff I love. Because the thing is, look, we all know at the end of the day, professional wrestlers, the show is considered WWE or even AEW, right? But sometimes those indie shows are so good, man. Like in those small places where those guys are going to put their blood, sweat, and tears into each match, and that's what you love about the sport, and you respect it so much more.
Well, it's even like when these guys like were in either New Japan, NWA, Impact. You watch some of those matches, and you're like, holy shit, these are like some damn good matches. Like, and we're not watching.
And Brian Myers is definitely onto something with this school. I mean, he's definitely trained some. He's been very successful, and I think it's only a matter of time before a guy like VSK winds up being a full-time wrestler with AEW, because his matches have been that good. And I'm not just saying that because he was just on our show. I mean, his match against Spears was awesome. His match against Ethan Page was great. I mean, he has great matches. He's a lot of fun to watch, man. And I forgot because he brought up Eric James.
Mm-hmm.
Eric James is the guy who was Lana's first husband.
Right.
The guy who announced it was Lana's first husband. His gimmick is funny because it's like a boy band gimmick, but he's a very good wrestler. He comes out to Tearing Up My Heart by NSYNC. But he's a great wrestler. His matches kick ass, and he's a great heel.
Now, I'm very excited to watch VSK and like watch his career unfold right in front of our eyes. Whether he goes AEW or WWE, whatever the path is, I'm very excited for it.
And the crazy thing is, man, is like when you talk to the wrestlers, like they love talking to the fans. Like they will talk to you. Yeah. During one of the intermissions, I talked to Bear Bronson. He's a massive guy. Super nice, like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. And I just told him, I was like, these shows are great, and he's like, I really want to take my daughter. I was always a little skeptical, and he says, we're a family show here. Don't ever think you can't take your daughter, and everything. And he was just like super nice, and just a great all around show. And I can't wait for them to get their shows back and running again because it's going to be awesome. And this is what I always say. Like right now, 2020 just really sucks.
Yeah,
with everything going on. Which means that 2021 is going to be so much better. And right now, we're already going into July, bro. Look how fast we are. We're already in July.
I know. This year is moving.
So maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe that's a good thing that it's moving quickly so that we can just move on from it and just, get on to 2021 when, everything is getting right with the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess on a non-sports, on a sports note really quickly, we had another player drop out of MLB. Ian Desmond is the latest guy to sit out the 2020 season for the Rockies. We had DeAndre Jordan test positive for COVID, so now the Brooklyn Nets are a big mess. because he's not going to be in the playoffs, and neither is Dinwiddie.
Mhm.
Well, Dinwiddie hasn't officially ruled it out yet, but he most likely will be out. And give it up to Brody and the Mets, man. They signed their second-round pick, JT Ginn.
Mhm.
You know, was supposed to be a first-round talent, and a lot of people thought he was going to take his commitment to, I think it was Mississippi State or something.
Yeah.
You know, the Mets strategy is really working, and now you're seeing a little bit of another nucleus of like possible of Harvey, Syndergaard, and Matz, with guys like Matt Allen, Josh Wolf, and JT Ginn, and then you go with Pete Crow Armstrong. You know, the Mets are building a nice little nucleus. It's the second year in a row now that they've gotten all their draft picks signed and ready to go. So that's big. That's a big check mark for Brody, man.
Yeah, like I say, you want to bash Brody for like some of the decision making he's done with like the Cano trade. All right, but he's been doing since like that trade. He's been doing very good with these signings, like in signings and draft picks, and some trades that went down. He's been doing very good. He's been doing good as a GM. Simple enough to say it.
And on that note, that's going to do it for the Moffett on the Mic show for tonight. Again, a very special thank you to the Creative Pro champion VSK for joining us. Killer interview. And if you want to follow him on Instagram and Twitter, it's at That VSK. And you could check out, he's always tweeting stuff. And, you know, he'll probably be, before you know it, he'll be back in the ring soon enough. But we really appreciate him taking the time. He is officially our first athlete to be on the Moffett on the Mic show. And, you know, again, a kick-ass interview overall. You know, I love talking about this stuff. And we really appreciate VSK taking the time to be on our show and everything. Clem, thank you for holding it down like you normally do. And again, this is on you, man. So take a pat yourself on the back, because that was today was a kick-ass interview, and you definitely brought it. And I really, Dan, thank you for going the extra mile for the show, even though I can't, even when I can't pay you. So.
I can't pay myself.
But as always, follow the Moffett on the Mic show on Instagram at Moffett on the Mic, Twitter at Moffett on the Mic, and my Facebook page as well. You can follow the A1 Sports Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On behalf of the People's Producer, Chris Clem, I am Craig Moffett. This has been the Moffett on the Mic show. Everybody, wherever you are, stay safe, wear the damn mask, and have a great one. And we'll be back in a couple of days with an all-new show. We'll be continuing our Why Your Team Doesn't Matter segment for Major League Baseball. Our next show, we're going to do the entire NL West. So we're going to talk about the Padres, the Dodgers, the Rockies, and the Diamondbacks on that show. So again, everybody stay safe. Have a great rest of the day. Clem, I will talk to you later. And everyone, stay safe. Have a great one. Clem, see you.